difficult time at school. And yeah, and so basically he was having trouble staying at school, and we were trying to figure out some way to motivate him. And he really wanted a snake, and I had been saying, no, we're never getting a snake, but I was like, well, maybe this will do the trick. And so I was like, okay, if you can hit this goal, we'll look at getting you a snake. And so we got him a snake, and we went out to a show and got the snake, and I just like thought it was the coolest thing ever, and went back the next day and got a snake for myself. And then it just like quickly spiraled from there. These things do. As these things do. So it was originally looks like we just went live. I'm a little sorry. That's what I'm a little scattered by that.
Yeah, no, it's right. I noticed it didn't go, so I just hit that and let people know. We've been live for a minute. So ever since that you started, I don't know, somehow it shorted and it finally went. So anyway.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
we're good.
Yeah. So anyway, it started with ball pythons because that was really what he knew about at the time, and so I started with ball pythons. Started breeding about a year into it. Like I started, moving in the direction of breeding. I pretty quickly ended up getting into carpet pythons as well, and then I also got into hognose snakes, and I bred a couple seasons of hognose. I think I did about 5 years of ball pythons, and another 4 or so years of carpets. It got really, really big at one point, to the point that I had my own facility and, the whole thing. I've been doing it as a full-time thing for a while, for a couple of years. And it was too big, and I wasn't having fun anymore. And I started getting into more lizardy things. And when I did that, my facility wasn't adequately secure for the lizards. And so I had to bring the lizards back home. And then once I had it was a whole mess. But anyway, so I ended up transitioning to lizards in the past couple of years. And I've been doing only lizards for pretty much most of 2024. I ended up getting entirely out of snakes at the beginning of the year. And so doing largely tree monitors, some other smaller monitors as well, working with a number of different other things, little other things too. But yeah, lizards.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So what was why or did you just like the lizards more? Or what went into that transition or that thought process?
So basically when I had to bring the lizards back home, it was no longer really super cost effective for me to have lizards at home and this other facility. And I didn't have space to bring the other animals back to my house. Like if I brought the other animals back to my house, then it would limit what I could do with the lizards. So I felt like I kind of needed to choose one or the other. And at that point I was more energetic about the lizard stuff. And so I decided to go that direction. It was super scary because at that point I made that decision. I had not successfully bred them yet. And tree monitors are a little bit trickier to breed than some of the stuff I had been working with before. And so fortunately it all worked out, but it was definitely a leap of faith there for a little bit.
Okay. How did you, with the tree monitors being so hard, how did you learn how to breed? Did you have mentors? Did you read books?
Yeah.
Or okay.
All of the above. So I read scientific papers. I read there's not much in the way of books, but I listened to basically every podcast I could listen to with people who had been successful breeding them. I started talking to people who had had success. And I just got lucky. Truly, I ended up with some animals that were just shocking, ended up being shockingly good breeders. And so there was a good amount of luck in there too. But I think the fact that I had put in several years of breeding other reptile species before, it definitely helped.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially with the carpets, because carpets require a little bit more work because you have to temperature cycle and food cycle and that kind of stuff with them. And so I guess it was a little bit of experience working with some stuff that was more than just putting 2 snakes together in a box. So
yeah. Yeah, or the two leopard geckos, and yeah, it's super easy. You just put them together. But I feel like I would like, the challenge of, trying to learn from the animal a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always like to learn stuff. So
that's what I really, really love about working with tree monitors is you really have to pay attention to them. You've got to pay attention to their behaviors, to the way their bodies are, to how they're responding to their environment, how they're eating. And all of those give you little clues as to, what's going on, where a female is in her cycle, is she receptive, all of those different things. And I really enjoy the kind of like intellectual challenge to it. It's really fun for me.
Which, like with the tree monitors, which kind? Because I know there's like red, blue, green. Did you start out with a certain kind, or all of them? Did you start out with babies and grow them up, or by pairs?
Yeah, so I started with I picked up a pair of green tree monitors, and I put together a pair of black tree monitors that were adults. I started growing up some babies as well. My first ones to go were the black tree monitors, which was kind of weird because they're of most of the mainstream ones. They're probably the ones that are a little bit more tricky to get breeding. And that's where the luck came in. I just ended up with a female that's a really good breeder. And the 2 animals that are really into each other. So that was very, very serendipitous. But yeah, I did a little bit of everything. As I've gotten more into it, I'm moving heavily away from wild caught stuff and more captive bred. But because there's such a huge difference. But sometimes early on, it was like you get what you can find. So so yeah,
for sure.
But it's so my first clutch was from my black trees. And I was certain that they were never going to hatch. It's a 5.5-month incubation process. And so there's a lot that can go wrong during that amount of time. But somehow miraculously, they all 4 eggs ended up hatching. And about a month after that first clutch, I got a clutch from the greens, and they've been cycling. I have my yellows are producing now. And I'm still trying to get my blues productive. They've been a little bit more challenging because my females are very shy and they are very nervous eaters. And so the second they're paired with a male, they stop eating and will try to starve themselves.
Oh, wow.
And even it's been a lot of work trying to keep weight on those too. So they've been a little bit frustrating for me, but yeah, the other stuff has been really, really good. So
what kind of tricks do you have when they're not eating well? Like, what do you feed them on a normal basis? And then what do you do to get them back on food if they go off? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, they don't really go off of food. They're just light eaters, I would say. But, because, very, very different metabolic needs than snakes, obviously. But they primarily are insectivores. So things like dubia and crickets are kind of more the mainstay of the diet. But then I also supplement with things like quail, mice, eggs. And so, they get a variety of things. The reproductive females really need to be heavily supplemented more with some of the other foods. They need more, a little bit more dense nutrition than just the bugs. But I try for the most part to keep my males just on bugs because the males will get very fat very quickly if you let them. They will eat everything and they will eat to the exclusion of the female. So sometimes I'll have to move a male out of the cage and then feed the female if they're together, or I'll have to keep them separate until we're moving into a point where the female is, put on really good body condition, is starting to move into a cycle, and then put them together. But yeah, it's a lot of really watching them and paying attention. I have, some of them like mice, but not quail. Some like quail, but not mice. They almost all love eggs. Some of them are more into crickets. Some of them are more into roaches. None of them really like worms for some reason, but yeah. So it's just a lot of experimenting, and then kind of paying attention to what each one will go for.
Which one likes? How many pairs do you have?
So I currently have 5 pairs of tree monitors, adult tree monitors paired up. Well, that are currently potentially reproductive. I have another pair of greens that are just about. No, I have 6 pairs. I have 2 blacks, a green, a yellow, and 2 blues. I have another pair of greens that are about to come online. And so, yeah, and then I have some baby cordensis that are growing up.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I have several other species of things as well. I'm working with spiny-tailed iguanas and calotes, and I recently got into uromastics. And so there's a bunch of fun stuff going on. And then with Ackies as well. My Ackies have been very productive for me. I've been working with King's monitors, but it's really striking out there. I've not had a lot of success with those so far. So a bunch of different stuff right now.
Would you say your favorite green tree?
Probably the black trees. Well, hard to say. So the cordensis are probably I really, really like the cordensis. They're the friendliest. They're really fun. They're probably my favorite, but I haven't bred them yet. So of the ones I've been breeding, the greens are usually the friendliest, but there's just something about the blacks that's so special. They're like, they just look like dragons. They're just, they're really neat. Yeah.
Super cool. Yeah. I always like the blue one.
It's been a lot of fun working with them. So I like having Ackies available too, so that if I'm vending a show or that sort of thing, like, most people have no business owning a tree monitor. And I like to be able to be like, this is a very cool animal, but have you considered an Ackie? Because they're really a much more durable pet for most people. Tree monitors require a whole lot of space and daily care, and it's a little bit more intensive.
I guess if you go into like what size do you recommend, like general care? I've always been kind of curious and just learning myself. Yeah, to kind of describe that care and who the ideal person would be to take care of them, I guess.
Yeah. So basically, you're looking at a cage that's 4 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot as a minimum. If you can keep temperature and humidity in the right ranges, and bigger is always better. Or bigger is usually better, I would say. I'm starting to experiment with some 6 foot tall enclosures, and we'll see how those go. But anyway, so that would be the minimum. You want lots of climbing surface, so things like bark around the sides. Typically it's advised that temperatures are pretty high, like not temperatures, that humidity is fairly high. So 80% humidity or so is what I always heard. Although I kind of question whether it really needs to be that high. I think a little bit lower is fine. And actually, I was in Australia a few weeks ago, and we went up to tree monitor habitat there, and learning a little bit more about that habitat. I think they can handle even a little bit drier because it's very seasonal there, where there's there's a wet season and a dry season. And in the dry season, it might only be like 50% humidity. Whereas in the wet season, you're more like 100. So, and that's kind of one of the triggers for breeding too, is for them in the wild. So there's a lot, I think, that can be done experimenting with humidity from that perspective. But that's like a little bit more advanced care. For more normal keepers, I'd say probably shoot for around 70% humidity in the cage. Usually that means deep substrate, it means a pretty decent sized water source, and it means regular spraying. And that could be with like a misting system or hand spraying. You're usually a hot spot of around 100, with a temperature gradient from somewhere in the 90s down into the high 70s. Usually it's going to be a vertical temperature gradient, so it's cooler at the bottom, warmer at the top. And then temps off, lights off, everything at night. I usually keep mine on a 12 hours on, 12 hours off light cycle, because they're fairly equatorial. And so that seems to work fine. And yeah, so that's kind of like the basics. They need cork tubes. They really, really, really like nesting inside cork tubes. So giving them those kind of places where they can hide is really important. And then when some people, it sounds like a lot of people keep nest boxes in full time. I usually only put them in right around the time a female lays.
Yeah, so. Had this question.
Yeah. So for nest boxes for the females, I pay attention to, it's pretty easy to tell when a female is going to lay. So basically you're looking at around 30 days after the last lock, and her body temperature changes. She gets very lethargic right before she goes into laying. She'll stop eating. I remove the male. That's hugely important. Male has to be gone before she lays. And that's for his safety as well as the safety of the eggs, but primarily his safety. Because the females get very protective of their nesting site, and they will, when they're in that hormonal state after laying, they will really mess up a male that comes near their eggs. So male, it needs to be gone. And then I use just a opaque kind of Tupperware, not Tupperware, but like a Rubbermaid type box, opaque from Home Depot with a hole in the lid. I use a mix of sand and cocoa coir, moistened. You're shooting for a temperature of around 86 inside the box. And so I usually achieve that with a heat pad underneath of it. And usually that works. Sometimes they lay underneath the box. Sometimes they lay in the box. And then I've also filled up cork tubes with laying substrate. And I had one, my yellow chose that as opposed to the nest box. So particularly for the first time girls, I like giving them a lot of options so they can choose. And then once they get into a cycle, they're usually going to choose the same thing over and over again.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then I just have it in. I only have the lay box in right around laying time, and then I remove it right after they lay. But other people leave it in more full time, but they don't actually nest in the box so much. They are more into like hollow tubes and that kind of thing for nesting. So it's really just for laying.
Okay. And then when you see them, you obviously what's the incubation? You said 5 months. What's like the temperature like for that?
Yeah. So I think I have my incubator currently set at 84.5. I incubate in sim containers. I use water crystals, like the kind of that you for plants or that you use for like water as a water source for bugs. I use water crystals, suspend the little tray over the water crystals, and then put the eggs there. I'll pay attention to the condition of the eggs. If they're starting to get a little dry, I'll put damp sphagnum moss around them, not touching them, but around them. And if they're getting a little bit too inflated, I'll put dry sphagnum moss in to kind of suck up some of that surplus moisture. Okay. And then they cook for 160-ish days. My greens go a little bit less than that. My blacks go a little bit more. And my first yellow is due to hatch in probably the next week. So we'll see what it decides to do.
That's super. And they usually do 4, you said, or is it varied with the?
So it varies. A friend of mine had a blue tree monitor give him 12 eggs once, which is just insane. Typically 4 to 6 eggs is what you're gonna see. My green has given me 5 sometimes. My blue has my black has only given me 4. She's never given me more than 4. Yeah.
And is that so? It sounds like it's an individual thing, not so much the blacks versus the yellows versus the greens, correct?
So I've heard that blacks typically don't do more than 4 generally. I would imagine that people are seeing a little bit more from blues because they're larger. but yeah, I think greens, it's pretty typical to see 4 to 6 in there. And the male only is interested in mating. Well, he's often interested, but they'll only actually mate when she is in the just about to ovulate. That's the only time you'll actually see her accept mating from him. And so typically if you see mating, it means she's cycling and you're counting down the days until you get the clutch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Cool. So anyway, it's really fun. I enjoy it a whole lot. Yeah, it's really fun. The Ackies are a little bit easier, a lot easier to take care of, smaller cages. And yeah, smaller cages, and they're just really, they don't really care about humidity. They're just not fussy. They're like a lot of those Australian species are that, are used to life in the outback, like bearded dragons or, that kind of thing. They're pretty durable. So
yeah. I always like the Ackies part of what's like, how do you think the behavior is between those two species? Like they're both pretty intelligent, but what have you kind of noticed between the two? Just curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, big difference is arboreal for the tree monitors. The Ackies really, really like to dig. So you'll see more tunneling behavior from them. You'll see them burrow underneath things. They like temperatures a bit warmer. They and behaviorally, they're not quite, I mean, they'll be active, but usually the tree monitors are a bit more active. They're just like out and about exploring every inch of their cage every day. Yeah, but typically they're more relaxed. They don't take a lot of work to like tame for handling. I don't think I've ever had an adult Ackie try to bite me. I wish I could say that about tree monitors, but I can't. And so they're just and I don't know what extent that is. They've just been, a little bit further along in the domestication process versus since they've been around longer versus some of the tree monitors. But yeah, they're just a little more laid back.
That's interesting. That's an interesting part of it. I think I don't want to miss all the question, but green trees are the calmest.
Yes. So greens and cordensis, which are basically another type of green, they're the two that are going to be the calmest from the get-go. They typically require, they'll typically, my baby greens will just kind of fling themselves out of the cage at me. They're super easy to handle. They're not super bitey. Whereas some of the other species take a bit more work to develop a little bit more relationship with them. So yeah, I would definitely say that greens of the ones I'm breeding right now, the greens are the ones for sure that are the calmest, more handleable. They're just a little bit, if you're looking for a pet, they're a little bit more the way to go there. I would say.
Okay. Yeah. What are some what's your normal, or I guess your recommended routine when you're trying to tame them? Because I've seen some of my friends have them where they train them to go up on the arm. What do you kind of suggest? What have you done to get them?
So basically, it takes time. So I tend to sit with them. Like I'll get a cup of coffee and sit in front of their cage with the cage open. Put my hand in, let them come over, smell my hand, walk on my hand, realize my hand isn't going to do anything to them. And really just try to so I'll do that. And then I'll also work on tongue feeding. And then, once they're comfortable with both, it gets to be a little bit easier to get them to come out. So really the best way to do it is just get them, really work on developing that kind of trust with them, that they know that you're safe, that you're not, a big scary thing that's trying to grab them. And then if they just think of you kind of as a tree, all the better. They're never going to sit with you and just be chill. Sometimes some people say that they'll, hang out on their shoulders or run around their head and stuff while they're walking around. I don't have any that are quite that tame, but I do have some that I can have out that'll hang out with me for a little while.
I had another reticulated python guest on. She always talked about the choice handling, I think is I think the term, but leaving it up to the animal to decide what they want to do with you. And I found that really fascinating. So it sounds like it's
very, very, very much along that line. That's generally what is going to be the most effective. It's to the point where I even have a friend who's a very successful tree monitor breeder and puts a lot of effort into socializing his animals. And he even down to when he's moving them from the lay box into their enclosure for the first time, he lets them come to him in that process and doesn't from the very beginning. That's every interaction with him is like that. And I think it makes a difference for sure. My black tree monitor babies are a little bit more high strung, a little bit more spastic than that. And so I do tend to get them. They also tend to be a lot more bitey from the get-go. And so for them, I do tend to hold them and get them used to being held a bit more. Because typically they settle down really fast once they realize that they're not actually going to be eaten. And so they're just too flighty and jump and run away and that kind of stuff. And so sometimes for them, I need to not be quite so animal led. But that would always be the ideal.
Yeah. And then do you find it's more individual based with how long it takes for them to get used to you, or are you finding it species based, or have you not really found a thread with that?
There are very definite tendencies among the species. So you'll have an occasional animal that is different, but typically every blue I've had has been kind of flighty and shy. And there are certainly blues out there that are not flighty or shy, but it takes a bit more work with the blues, and they're just naturally a little bit more reserved. Whereas Cordensis, super interested immediately. The second I showed them my hand, they're just immediately walking right onto me. They just don't care. It takes no work with them. So and it's pretty consistent. Obviously there is always going to be an outlier animal here or there, but the species really do have behavioral differences from what I've been able to tell so far.
It'll be interesting to see how that kind of carries through as we captive breed these guys, if that will we get to a point. What are your thoughts on that?
So I mean, there's definite differences between captive bred animals and wild caught animals, huge differences in handleability there. But even among captive bred animals, the differences are there. And so it's very possible that as we get many, many, many generations into this, that some of that things will settle down, particularly if people are selecting for friendlier animals as breeding animals and that sort of thing. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. So much of it's so new with tree monitors, blue tree monitors. I mean, we've only known that blue tree monitors exist for 20 years. So it's still, a lot of it's still very new. Well, it's only been in the past 5 to 10 years that people have really seen much of any success with regularly producing them in captivity. So we're only just now starting to get into some of those multi-generational animals.
I just find the species just very fascinating, just how kind of smart they are. How many people in the US do you think are working with them, and then worldwide, do you know how many are breeding them?
I couldn't even possibly say. I know a couple years ago, as I was making this transition, one day I looked on MORPH Market, and it was like during the summer when, or I guess early fall, when numbers were higher, but it was like there was something like 40,000 some, no, it was like 60,000 some ball pythons listed on MORPH Market, and there were 16 tree monitors.
Wow.
And so it's much, much, much smaller. The number of people working with them. It is always going to be a smaller market because you can't house large numbers of them because they require such large spaces. So people are never going to have, like, it would be very rare for a person to be able to have a tree monitor collection that rivals like the kind of ball python collections that people have. Like, it's just, you can't do that kind of numbers. Plus they are breeding multiple times a year. And so, like, you know, you can get as many as 4 clutches a year from them. And there's only so many of them that are going to sell and that you're going to be able to find really good homes for. And so I guess that's part of what you were asking too, is like, how do I like find people and make sure that people are good, potential candidates for them. And it's something I really put a lot of thought into. Typically the price point makes it a little bit more, so that people who are interested generally have come in and thought about it and done their homework. I want people to show me their setup before they get the animal. We talk through how they're getting things set up. We talk through the care specifically. And I generally like offer a lot of ongoing support with my customers. There have been people I've said, you know, this is probably not the right animal for you. But I've been really fortunate that most of the people who have come to me looking for animals have been really good people that I'm excited to see that have the animals, because I know they're going to take great care of them. And it's typically because they've done the work to seek me out. I've only posted on MORPH Market a couple of times. Typically people are finding me and reaching out to me.
Right. Yeah, that sort of price point. Something I've kind of noticed too, we kind of talked a little bit backstage about the price point of animals, and it's sad, but I've seen, as a vet, I do kind of consulting on the side for the reptiles and stuff like that, just kind of outsourcing stuff if they need to go to a vet or not. That's all I really do. But I see a lot of bad cases where the animal is just in so bad condition, and we talk about I'm like, you know, why did you let I don't want to make them feel bad, but I'm like, this was not an overnight thing. This was like a month-long thing. And it's, I mean, sad, but the response is, oh, I paid $20 for this gecko. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't think I needed to take it to a vet. Like, that's literally the answer I get when I ask, you know, what the thought process is why not give these animals care. So like, price, unfortunate as it is, does have kind of an effect on how well people take care of that animal.
No, it's true. And it's, you know, obviously it's a good thing to have animals available at different price points, because not everyone can get into those very expensive animals. And keep people out of the hobby. But it really makes a difference, in terms of, like, for a lot of people, the amount of like thought and attention that gets put into it ahead of time, when you're looking at that more expensive animal, particularly for someone who's not a breeder. And I think that's one of the differences, that I've kind of discovered as I've moved in this direction, is most of the people I sell to aren't breeding their animals. They're people who keep other reptiles, who've always wanted a tree monitor. And it's just kind of like their crown jewel that they have displayed, you know, in their living room, and this big, beautiful display cage. And, you know, it's going into that kind of situation. And so, you know, they're not generally like, people aren't looking at it with an investment eye. They're looking into it as a, like, this is a thing that is going to bring me a lot of joy.
In a very long, you know, these animals live for a long time. I mean, how long does a tree monitor live?
So
We probably don't know. I mean,
they're not super long lived, probably 15-ish years.
it's still decent, yeah.
Like, but a lot of them, obviously, like a lot of what's come in so far has been, imports with heavy parasite loads and animals that aren't necessarily going to make it for a super long time. So, but I think 15-ish years is kind of what to expect.
Okay, that's still a decent amount of time. Where kind of bring it back to like the traveling a little bit. We mentioned Australia. Is that where all of these different species come from, or where do they originate from?
So tree monitors are primarily from like New Guinea.
Okay.
But they're part of that. But there's a portion of Northern Australia that was connected to New Guinea not very long ago. And so you get a little bit of overlap with some similar species in this one little corner of Australia. For tree monitors, it's a different species called Keith horni that are in Australia. We don't have them in the hobby in the US. But the climates are very similar.
Okay. So it's where they kind of originate. They kind of temperate, dry-ish, where it sounds like there's seasons of dry and wet. So okay.
So Papua New Guinea, and then on the island of New Guinea, you'll find it on the Papua New Guinea side and on the Indonesia side.
Okay.
And then a lot of the species are island species. So the Cordensis or Biox, the black tree monitors are from the Aru Islands. Blues are from islands called Batanta. So they're all like the greens are kind of the mainland ones, although you find them on different islands as well. But so the greens are kind of the main species, and then the other ones tend to be more isolated island populations.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Have you seen what kind of traveling have you done, and have you seen them in the reptile go? I'm sure you have a lot of stories, but
I have not. We tried to find Keith horni in Australia. We were not successful. We did find green tree pythons, which was awesome. But yeah, so I've done a lot of different traveling. I really enjoy photography and wildlife photography in particular, and so that tends to be the focus of a lot of my travels. I've traveled throughout Central and South America. I've been to Zimbabwe a couple of times. Wow. So I've done the Amazon in Peru. I'm going back to Peru at the end of this month, and I'm very excited about that. This past summer, I went to Brazil. I went to the Pantanal in Brazil to take photos of jaguars, and that was insane. It was probably one of my favorite experiences of my life. And yeah, so a lot of different places. I've been to Guatemala, Costa Rica, but I enjoy herping, but I'm really, even more than herping, I just like taking cool photos of animals. So
what's been your favorite place, you think, to visit?
So so I would say Guatemala was one of my favorites. And it really surprised me because I wasn't expecting to love it so much going in. And what I really loved about it is there's so many unique habitats in such a small geographic area. And so you have volcanic areas, you have dry forest where you see things like beaded lizards. You have cloud forests where there's like abronia, and there's so many different habitats in such a small area, and it's not as profoundly heavily touristy as, say, like Costa Rica, which I also love Costa Rica, but yeah, Guatemala was really cool and kind of surprised me.
I think it's so important to travel outside the country and just experience something different. I feel like it gives you a better view overall, one of how lucky we are to be here in the US, but also just experience and learn new things. I think it applies to like your confidence here and just helps you become a more well-rounded person.
Oh, I didn't do it for the longest time. It's really only been in the past few years that I've started doing it. I have 4 kids and I was kind of lost to mom life for a long time. And the kids have finally grown to the point that I can actually get out and do some of this stuff now. And I just, yeah, it's hugely important. It's hugely important to my life. I appreciate the world around me in such a different way, you know, because of the travels for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I would say where have I been? I've been a few: Jamaica, Haiti,
Oh, wow.
and Japan, Tokyo. I've
Oh,
been to Japan.
wow. That's cool.
Yeah. I went in vet school. We went there and met some vet students over there and went to their school and learned how they did things and how vet medicine is different over there versus here. So it's a very interesting kind of outlook. And we did some traveling. I saw some of the shrines and stuff. And probably the biggest thing, we went to some like, oh, what was it? I think it was Kyoto, but it was a little town outside Tokyo that you took a bullet train to. We kind of walked up, and there's all these monkeys at the top, like these macaques, just like wild, just like walking around as like a lab in the vet. I'm like, holy cow, how is this safe? You know, they had like feeding through the thing, and I'm like, absolutely not. One kid got bit, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, yeah. Anyways, sidetrack story, but it's just very cultures are very different.
I can imagine that you were short circuiting as a lab vet. Oh my gosh.
Yes, like, yeah, monkeys carry a lot of diseases that we do not want as people.
A lot of diseases that people do not want. So
yeah, no, it is a fantastic experience. But
that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. Hopefully, been in school now, so can't travel much anymore. But hopefully in the future. So
yeah, there are phases to life, I think, and so. Yeah, I think it's about just enjoying the phase that you're in and knowing that time for other things will come.
Yeah, for sure. Before I want to learn more about the jaguars. But Lisa asked this question: did you stay at Green Hoose in Cape York?
No, we didn't. We were camping when we were up in Cape York. So
yeah,
maybe
so we just maybe Lisa's been around.
We camped near Iron Range when we were up in Cape York, and then we in some other places in Cape Tribulation we stayed at this fruit farm, which was freaking cool. They brought us, like, they had all sorts of weird exotic fruits that I had never heard of, and it was really fun and different. That's where I got to see a cassowary, which was such a cool freaking experience.
What is that?
It is a large bird similar to like emu or an ostrich.
I thought it was a bird. They have like
really sharp claws. And they've like disemboweled people with their claws. And
oh my goodness!
But they're not actually as dangerous as people like play them out to be. But I came across a cassowary when I was out on a walk. Out on a hike by myself, and it was freaking amazing. It was one of the coolest experiences I've had. I didn't get any good photos, but it was like, I don't know, 20 seconds where we were both just kind of like near each other and aware of each other, and it was walking around trying to eat, and then it just kind of walked back off through the forest.
Shoot, I'd be scared. Knowing I disemboweled people, I'd be like, no. I'd be like, I'm not taking a picture of you. Bye. I'll take the jaguar. I think I've seen them. They have like the yellowish like crown, right? Maybe not.
Yeah, they've got like a blue wattle thing. Like they're real different.
I know I've heard about them, but
so that was really cool. I was really hoping to see a cassowary. So
yeah. Any other fun travel stories that come to mind? I love listening to travel stories. And
so I mean, one of the other places, the first place I went that kind of started everything, I left one of my law jobs. Well, I left my law jobs, period. I stopped working as a lawyer. I was super burnt out. And I was like, I need to just go somewhere where I am around no people and people can't reach me, and I need to connect with nature. And I went up to Alaska and went to Brooks Falls, which is in Katmai National Park, and got to hang out with brown bears for several days. And it was one of the coolest things. There's this really, really dense salmon population there. And it's like the place where you see the bear on top of the falls catching the salmon that's like jumping up into its mouth and that kind of stuff. And so because there's such plentiful food, you see bears in much, much larger numbers than you typically do in other places. So it's very, very large population of bears. And they really don't care about people. And so like no one uses bear spray. The park rangers might have bear spray, but it never gets used. They just, you follow kind of rules and keep your distance from them. But yeah, so one morning I was walking through the woods on my way out to the falls to take pictures of them, eating the fish. And just came across a bear, and it was standing there kind of blocking the path, and just had to wait for it to decide to move itself along its way. But yeah, it's those kind of encounters are really, really neat. I love being on animals. I don't know.
Yeah, especially it's such a different seeing them in the wild. I mean, you appreciate them in, I guess, a zoo standpoint, but I always like seeing them in their natural habitat. I feel like it's something just different. There's a different kind of meaning that you're now in their space, and to respect that. And you're not, the world kind of revolves around us day to day, but now,
you're in their space. The one that really surprised me was African elephants. I did not fully appreciate the immense power of African elephants until being very close to them in the wild. And we were herping, and you'd hear an elephant and everyone would like run back to the truck. It was real different.
Yeah. Well, they're so, I feel like, kind of unpredictable, especially like the bulls. And that kind of thing.
And the cows, like they're so protective of their babies. And we got like bluff charged by a female at one point.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. I've seen only videos of that where the guide will kind of like yell at them, and I'm like, I would not want that job.
No, like we literally, when we were in Africa, like there was a guy with a gun with us everywhere we went.
Yeah.
It was for real. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's so cool seeing them up front. I've gone to file their feet before. It was actually in Tokyo. We went kind of behind the scenes at the zoo there and saw the pandas and stuff, which we couldn't touch those. It's like a Chinese or I guess Japan property, but China ultimately owns them, which is like also kind of.
I was reading up on the panda program recently. It's really interesting.
It's interesting. Like if the panda like dies or any sort of tissue is taken from the panda, has to be like sent over to China. So basically China like owns them and just rents them out, rents everything out about them to the US, or we were in Japan. So they were in Japan essentially. But yeah, it's just an interesting political, I guess political, but global kind of standpoint on that. So that's what we did. We saw that and got to file their elephants' feet. And I think there's a lot of research being done with elephants too, because they don't carry cancer. That most animals would that live that long. It's something with the genes, the telomeres, I guess, and the chromosomes. And still learning about it, but it's so interesting the way you can learn from wild animals that what we wouldn't know. So
no, that's fascinating.
So yeah, maybe one day we can treat cancer using elephant information. But
elephant genes. I love it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else I wanted to ask with the. I just wanted to hear about the travels and any other stories you had.
So I'll tell briefly a little story from Australia, because I had probably the most exciting experience I've ever had in Australia, which was we were detained by police for suspected poaching.
Wild.
It was alarming and traumatic. Basically, someone saw us taking a picture of a frilled lizard on the side of the road, decided, like, made up this whole story. The only reason we would be doing this is because we're poaching. They called the police, told the police they saw us take an animal, which obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
So Australia takes, their wildlife very, very seriously. They set up a roadblock looking for us, and we're there for a day and a half waiting for our car to arrive.
Holy cow.
So we pulled up, and there's all of these police officers, and we were immediately detained. They looked through everything. They were certain they were going to find us carrying all sorts of contraband, and obviously did not. They took my memory cards from my camera. They took a number of people's cell phones. I was fortunate that I got to keep mine. But they still have my memory card, so that's pretty awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. So that happened in Australia, and I've never had an experience like that before.
Like they put you in cuffs and put you in jail type of thing?
We did not get put into handcuffs. We basically we had to sit by the side of the road while they searched through all of our stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was wild. Not my favorite experience, but I mean, I was glad that if that was going to happen, at least it was in an English speaking country.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, they take animals very, very seriously in Australia.
And it's a good thing, but also I'd be curious on who the heck saw you.
I know.
And just decide to be a Karen and tell, even though they don't know all the facts. It's like classic Karen.
Karen. I've since heard that they kind of have a problem with that in Australia. There are apparently a lot of tattletales.
Really? Is it from other tourists or from people who actually live there? Or do you know?
From a friend who's traveled there a whole lot to do herping. So I don't know. I'm not really inclined to go back to Australia anytime soon after that experience.
Yeah. I wouldn't either. I mean, you can't even take a freaking picture, then why go?
Exactly. But yeah, but we got to see a lot of cool stuff before that happened, so that was neat.
Yeah. That's a fun story to tell. I mean, I don't know. I would think hopefully they give you your memory camera
really hope
thing
so.
back, but I don't know how they would. Maybe
to have my address to send it back whenever they conclude their investigation. But we'll see. I'm not holding my breath.
Well, he's better than your phone. I know.
Oh my god, I would have been distraught had I lost my phone.
That happened on our trip.
I've never had an experience like that before, so I was like, oh my god, I don't know what's happening.
I mean, I wouldn't know what to do either.
Yeah.
We had something kind of similar. Kind of awkward story, but it's similar when we went to camping in the Moab up in the canyon lands there. Because whatever you go to the bathroom, you have to do it in these bags, right? Because they don't want human excrement there, and there's no bathrooms anywhere. So he was asking for it as soon as we came back.
Oh wow.
The policeman, a ranger or whatever, was asking for the bags, and I guess TMI, but we didn't have any. Nobody had any, and he did not believe us. He's no, where are the bags? I was we don't have them, because none of us are used to
So
going in the wild.
Travel, that's not an uncommon thing.
none of us could go. We just didn't go. We waited till we got back, but that ranger did not believe us. So he went through all their stuff looking for the bags of whatever. I'm like, yeah, because I would hide it in my backpack.
You're like, I'm not hiding shit in my car. Like, it's fine.
It was the most awkward thing.
So weird.
Yeah, and someone lost their phone there too. We were like in traveling. I don't know what the word for it is, but there was basically a opening in the earth like underneath us, and we were kind of crawling over it. And the phone like fell out and just went into the abyss, never to be found again. Like you had a light, you can't see the bottom, so I don't know how far it goes down, but yeah. The fun you have.
That's really cool. That's part of the country I haven't been to, and I would really like to go at some point.
It's like another planet. Everything's like red. You feel like you're on Mars type of thing. And we spent, I don't know, 3 days, did 20 miles of just backpacking, and you can't hear any cars, and it's just dead silent at night. It's just it's like being in nature and quietness part of it. Lisa asked, what about Indonesia? Any plans to see the tree monitors there?
Yeah, so I am currently talking with someone about potentially putting something together for Indonesia. There's a tree monitor breeder who has done a bunch of travels around Indonesia and actually lives in Indonesia now with working with tree monitors. And so I've been talking with him about trying to get something together, but nothing's set yet. But it's definitely something I would love to do and see.
Yeah, that would be cool. And I feel like that would help you like with your own animals too, just seeing how they live in the wild. Yeah.
So much. Just seeing the habitat and learning about the habitat in Australia was helpful. And so because it's just this one little teeny tiny pocket area in Australia where they occur. And learning what the characteristics there were, versus some of the areas nearby that were also kind of jungly, but like they weren't in those areas, and like, why would that be, and that sort of thing. So it was really I had a lot of takeaways from that, and so I would imagine Indonesia would be even more so. Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. What do you? I guess I don't know. I'm focusing more on the tree monitors. I think those are cool. What's like the most challenging thing you've had with them? Is there anything that you would do differently if you had to? Any part that you've kind of started over again?
Yeah. So, I mean, the most challenging thing for me so far has been my blue tree monitor project in general. When I originally bought a bunch of babies to grow up. You can't sex them at the beginning. And I ended up with 4.1, which was not ideal odds. And so I had to sell a bunch, start over, get some new animals. So there was that, and then I still haven't gotten them breeding. The fact that my girls just don't want to hold any weight on their body to save their lives, like all of that's really, really frustrating. So, I don't know. I don't know what I would say that I would do different, other than like start with adults I knew the sex of. But I don't even know if I would say that, because I really liked growing them up, but it just got bad odds. So but I had another species where I got 4 out of 4 males, so at least it wasn't that.
Oh shoot. Yeah. They always talk about trying to hit, at least for ball pythons, trying to hit the odds on the genes, let alone the sex too. So you can kind of control the gene part of it, but the sex, that's a whole nother thing.
So I'm really good at picking males, apparently.
Because they're not like that we know of temp sexed incubation, right? I mean, it doesn't sound
they're CW. So but from what I understand, talking to some people, there are people tend to hatch out more females in captivity for some reason. And I don't know if I don't know why that would be, but apparently that's pretty consistent in captivity, is clutches tend to be a little bit more female heavy. But that's secondhand from other people. I haven't noted that myself. So I don't know. Another species I work with, so the one that where I got four males was Coyotes. I bought 4 animals from a clutch, figuring like, okay, I'll probably get a male and female from this. And it ended up all being males. And they found out after the fact that like for the first few clutches, it's really common for the entire clutch to be all one sex or all another sex. And then
really
it like evens out more. But like I thought that was weird. I don't know what the mechanism for that would be.
Yeah, but I don't know how that would happen. I'm trying to think of another species that would do that, but I can only think of species that have a ton just for survival, but it doesn't make sense survival wise to have all of one sex off and on. Like evolutionary, I don't know how that would make sense.
I don't. Again, that's another one where I've just heard it. I haven't seen it, but I did get, they were all males. And I don't know. Well, so we'll see when I start producing them what happens.
Yeah. No, I always like hearing like the challenges and if you did everything differently. But it sounds like you can start with adults, but ball pythons a lot too of her to start off as younger. They kind of maybe do better for you than the adjustment period it takes for an adult. So
so someone just commented that it's possible the Coyotes could be temperature based, and it is possible. I don't think there's enough people working with them, and I don't know if I don't know if there's been enough of a sample size in captivity to know for sure at this point. But it wouldn't surprise me either. But I don't know for sure one way or another.
So you back up on some questions too. Elise asked, would you recommend one sex over the other as far as pets? That's a good question.
Yeah, so really it just is a matter of size. Males are going to get significantly bigger than females. But there's no real temperament difference for male or female. Typically, if you're buying a baby, you aren't going to know if it's a male or female. You're buying it unsexed. And so I don't think it truly matters one way or the other. Boys, you just have to be careful that they're very likely to overeat. And you got to really pay attention to their body and starve them if necessary, because they will get fat, and they're not a species that's supposed to be fat. They're supposed to be a very, very slender species.
Okay. That's a common thing, and I feel like animals in captivity in general is just overfeeding them. I mean, it's hard not to, and when food's plentiful, we just give it to them. So I feel like we overfeed the snakes a lot too sometimes. Just like, I mean, I guess the balls can like take it, but I feel like, and we don't know long term what, I feel like it would have to have effect on their liver. I've always kind of thought that.
Definitely.
Liver. Yeah. I feel like I have some people, it's kind of rare, but they just go in and they just open, they find a snake dead. You know, I can't say it's like fatty liver or whatever, but that's what I feel like would be the most common, that or some congenital heart thing that you wouldn't know about. But it's kind of my theory on why they just, I don't know.
There's a lot of obese animals in captivity. And part of it's the overfeeding, but I think a huge part of it also is the lack of exercise. They're not moving around over the environment in the same kind of way that they would be in the wild. So you've got this combination of plentiful food and a more sedentary lifestyle, and don't we all know how that works?
Yeah, all too well. Yep. Lisa, theory that humidity can change same snake. I don't know. Super. I mean, I do the leopard geckos and their temp sex, so the females I do lower than the males. It's still not 100% accurate, but it's 60 to 80%. So I don't know genetically what happens there, but I'm sure the genes, I don't know, your XY is somehow impacted by the temperature. I'd have to read papers. I'm not sure, but
I wonder, because not all snakes are XY. pythons are, but and boids are, but not necessarily all of the snakes.
Interesting.
There are some that are RZW, like a lot of the lizards that I work with.
Very cool. Awesome. I'm trying to see before I move on, I don't want to miss any other questions.
Oh, what about PNG?
Oh yeah,
so in talking with some folks in Australia, sounds like it's not super safe in PNG. That Port Moresby is actually a very unsafe city, and I don't know that there's enough of an established industry that would be a place where I personally would feel super safe traveling to. I'm usually, a woman traveling on my own with a group, and that one's probably a little bit harder to make happen.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Too. Not all places are safe anymore. Thankfully, all the places, I guess Haiti is not safe anymore. I mean, I went back in undergrad, so it's been 10 years, probably 10, 8 years I've been, but it's not a safe place anymore. So it's sad how things can kind of change. Yeah, but what can you do? But with I guess more like the transition I was at, like, what are your current thoughts on like the ball pythons? Because I'm been in it for like a year, but what are your thoughts on like the market with that over production of them? Is that what kind of?
Yeah, so the overproduction of ball pythons definitely played a role in my decision to move away. I did not really feel like great about producing animals that no one really needed and contributing to a problem of oversupply of animals that would probably lead to suffering of animals. And so that is part of why I've moved away from ball pythons. I've been out of the ball python market for about a year, and I know that, so I don't know the market right now as well as I know the market from like a year or two ago. I'm glad I'm not working with ball pythons right now. It seemed to be a very good transition time when I did it. I think I'm glad I'm not doing it. I think for me, it's really the move toward like triple recessive, quad recessive, that I think is a big part of the downfall of the ball python thing altogether, because you're chasing these animals with such extremely low odds, and you're producing so much byproduct in the process that is often not stuff that anyone's really excited about.
Yeah.
And I didn't really like that. And I think that whole thing of producing these small odds leads to these really, really large collections. And I don't know that in the end, the animals are all the better for it.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting take on it. I'm kind of sort of come to that realization too in a year. Like when I first started out, it was all in my head, or what I was saying. It still is, of course, and like going through the multi-recessive odds. And so like I was like, every project I had, I needed to be like this huge triple and quad. And then I was like thinking about it more, and the people that we see hit these have like huge collections that most of us will not and probably should not obtain in the long run. So I've had to kind of change stuff around really and just kind of focus on fewer stuff that's all kind of related, and not maybe very, very long term do that, but in the short term really focusing on hitting like the visual. Like, for example, like I like the ultramale sunsets a lot. So I got an ultramale het sunset male, but I'm breeding him to visual ultramales. That way everything is going to be visual. Ultramale is something that is visually appealing and pretty, and then I test for the sunset and then I keep those back. That's what I'm kind of same thing with like pied stuff, like doing the pairing so that
pied, I feel like there's always going to be a market for pied ball pythons. Like
right.
They're just pretty. They're great pets. They're like pieds are always like there's always going to be a market for them.
Yep, that's what. Yeah, with the ultramale pie is kind of what I like too. So just kind of like changing the pairings around, like not so much hitting on the odds or the recesses, but switching it around to where everything will be visual for something, and then I just test for the het. That way, I'm not having a ton of this double.
Well, that's so. I think that's part of how the whole world has changed since I was doing all of this, because testing was only just getting started when I got out.
Oh. Yeah.
And so I'm just this whole world of like not even having to worry about like 50% or 66% or all of that stuff. Like that's a different world for me. That's not what yeah.
It's totally changed it. So allows someone small like me to like kind of get ahead by just testing for instead of keeping all the animals back. So I think that helps cut down on animals too, but then you still have the byproduct issue. So I don't know, for me, like I said, focusing on how I pair versus just trying to do triple head to quad head, mash them together, and there you go.
Focusing on making that byproduct stuff that's still an animal that there's a demand for. So by focusing on making sure that the byproduct is still a visual recessive or that kind of thing. I think you're on the right track there.
Yeah, that's why just something I've kind of noticed in the past year. It's tough because like I realize I don't want a huge collection. I want to keep it small.
My collection is much like so many orders of magnitude smaller now.
How many do you have still? How many have now?
I don't like to count because I don't feel like anything good comes from counting. So I don't know, but it's like I was probably at my height, including babies, like around 300 animals.
Holy cow! Wow,
it was really big. And now I'm probably more like 50-ish total, which is still stupid, but it's a little bit. No, it's probably not even that high. It's probably more like 40 now. It's definitely a lot smaller than it used to be. But yeah, but it takes up so much more space because everything has giant cages.
With the racks. I'll probably get an ARS here for Black Friday. I think I kind of need one as things get kind of bigger. But yeah, so what projects do you kind of work with on them? Or on the
like
on like the ball pythons.
Oh, what did I have when I was doing ball pythons?
Yeah.
So yeah, I had all era stuff. I still had some like a lot of my hatchlings were in like PVC stuff still, but most of my stuff was ARS.
ARS.
Yeah.
Seems like pretty good. I think I see some more. Oh, question.
Yeah, I saw that one. I don't honestly, I don't know a whole lot about the Bismarck Islands. So that one, I'm not really sure. And about the only thing I know that lives there are the Bismarck pythons. So I don't know. It would be worth looking into. I don't know about tree monitors there. I don't think I've heard of Bismarck tree monitors, but I just don't know. Yeah.
And then Alex, did you keep any carpets?
I didn't, and I miss them. Moving out the carpets was a bummer for me. I kind of hit a point where I realized I can still really, really love animals without having to keep them. And I feel like, my heart's always going to be in the carpet python community. I sponsored Texas Carpet Fest this year.
Cool.
I just like, I love carpet pythons. I love the carpet python community. And that's always going to be part of my world, even if I don't have them. But at some point I'd love to, if I ever get back into having snakes, I would definitely want some Brettles again, because I love Brettles.
Yeah, they seem pretty cool from the ones I've seen. Yeah, I think diversity is important, but also trying to, I mean, at least for me personally, trying to keep it manageable, not spreading yourself like too thin. Like I want to do stuff at a high quality, not so much high volume. So it's just kind of restraining yourself from buying every species because it looks cool.
Exactly. There are so many cool species that I love that I just am not set up to keep, but that's one of the reasons I really love photography, is because I've found all these other ways to appreciate cool animals aside from keeping them in boxes. And that's been really fun for me to have lots of ways to experience them.
For sure. Awesome.
Oh, Alex said the Texas Carpet Fest was great. I really wish I could have been there, and I'm so excited to go back next year. They do a really good job with it. I'm glad to hear it was awesome.
I didn't even think I asked, but where are you from originally? Is it Texas area?
So I was born and grew up in the Dallas area. My parents divorced. I went to high school in Pennsylvania, and then came back pretty quick. So I came back here for law school.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, and met my husband, and we've been here ever since.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm in Austin. I'm in Austin.
Okay. Very cool. Lisa you guys are asking pretty good questions. So.
Oh, did I see any other pythons? Yes, I absolutely did. So we saw we saw several scrub pythons. I saw 0 carpet pythons, which I am ashamed about that I went to Australia and did not see any carpet pythons. But then I also saw a spotted python.
I don't know too much about the spotted, so I'll have to.
Yeah, Antresia. So they're like children's pythons.
Oh, okay. Okay. I've heard of the children's. Yeah. I like the green trees. I'll be getting one in the spring, so I put a deposit.
Oh, they're really cool. They're really cool animals. And
I had one a long time ago, just a Biak. I really liked them. I liked them as a species, or I don't know. I don't know. I liked them, so I wanted to get a baby. So we'll see how that goes. But we'll ship in the spring when it's warm again.
That's awesome. That's really fun.
Yeah.
I love the whole watching them go through the color change. It's like, I don't know, every single set is like Christmas morning. It's wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, I think it'd be super cool. It's interesting how people just like different species. Like it's cool as like breeding them. I know a challenge, but then when you breed them, they all look the same generally. I'm sure there's differences, but like the ball pythons, I like how the one clutch you can have vastly different looking animals. But the green trees, generally they all look pretty similar. I know the green tree people are like gonna hit my DMs. How dare you say that?
Literally black tree monitor babies and green tree, like they all look the freaking same. You might have like slightly different, very, 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 very slight differences, but they're all pretty much fungible. They are the same.
But to the general eye, what ball python projects do you still do, or which ones did you do maybe don't work anymore?
I don't do any ball pythons anymore, so I have no snakes.
Oh yeah, okay. I thought maybe I got confused. You said it brought it down to like 40 or something.
Oh, 40 animals total. Yeah, like in my entire collection. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but I'm complete. I've been out of ball pythons for about a year.
Okay, I think that was What projects did you do? I guess when you did.
Yeah, so I did a lot. So I was in Monarch, and was working Monarch clown stuff. I did a lot with black axanthic. Obviously, like all the various different like clown pied hypo things. Those were the main ones, I think. A lot of various permutations of all of those things.
Mark, I'm more of the ultramel with the Mark. Be interesting to see what's done with it. They always, say, oh, Monarch or ultramel, but I think they both look good in different things.
I think they look very different. Like the coloration is different, but then also Monarch is a pattern morph in addition to a color morph, and most people don't pay attention to the pattern piece of it as much. It changes the pattern.
Good with that too. Yeah. C4 cut.
Yeah. So no more ball pythons. I part of it too was I was breeding all of my own feeders, and after 5 years of that, I really just needed to be done with breeding feeders.
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. People do not realize how much work it is with the feeders. And
I spent more time on the feeders than I did with the snakes.
It's so like heartbreaking too. Like I went out of town and like one of the tubs had like flooded. I even had someone checking on them too, and I had one of the tubs like flooded. Like I'm just like, I can't go out of town for a freaking weekend.
I know. It made it really hard to travel because like I could get someone to take care of the snakes, but like you gotta like be a friend on a whole other level to want to like clean someone's rodents for them. And so that was just, especially if you're doing the kind of rodent volume to feed a very large collection. And I'm so much happier now that I have a much, much smaller group of animals.
Just overall.
And my time is mostly spent on the animals, not on the feeders, because I don't breed any of my own bugs. I buy my bugs.
So you just ship them in.
I have to unpack bugs and clean, the holding containers and stuff, but it's nothing like it was with the rats. Yeah.
I kind of see that too, because I buy all the feeders for the leopard geckos. I just do mostly mealworms, but it's so much of like an easier, gut load them and then freeze them or not freeze them, but slow them down with the fridge and just feed them off. And it's a much simpler process and pretty cheap too. I mean, I only pay like, I don't know, $40-50 a month or something.
Oh, that's wonderful. My bills are way, way higher, but I spend a very large amount of money on bugs.
I don't have very many animals. I've done the dubias I've done before. They weren't bad. I was pretty successful at those, but again, somehow like when I had somebody checking on them, they like didn't shut the thing all the way, so a bunch of them like got out that I found later on dead in the house. I'm like, because when I came home, the top of the tub like wasn't latched, so they got out. I know, it's like can't leave with animals. It seems like
roaches are easy, but in the quantity that I need them, I would have to have so many colonies of them to make sure I have appropriate size feeders available at all times. So many colonies of them. And I just I'm done with it. So
it's extra work. Alex,
crickets are the worst. I hate having to feed them, but I have to. There's no way around. The babies respond to the motion of crickets so much better than they do so much better than dubia. They need that like little thing around his face. I've looked at other I tried red runners at one point. Like I've looked at other roach species. The red runners scared me because they're so fast and they create an infestation so easily. I just crickets and roaches for the most part, and then supplement other stuff. But I hate crickets. My house is empty because there's crickets chirping everywhere.
I can't stand them.
My kids get annoyed because crickets escape and they find them in weird places. I hate crickets, so I hear you.
I've seen some people for the green trees do grasshoppers. Is that a word for it?
So grasshoppers are an incredible feeder source. I've tried breeding grasshoppers twice on 2 different occasions, failed miserably both times. They're very, very finicky. If they are exposed to even a whiff of insecticide or non-organic produce, they will drop dead.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are so much harder to keep going than other species. And so I have not been successful with them. I've tried 2 different species, 2 different times. I order grasshoppers every once in a while. But generally, like, the price is just too high for the amount of meat that I get for them. And I have bigger animals to feed and they need a lot of meat. So, unfortunately, I can't afford to feed them on a regular basis. But they're a really great food source, like a really great food source.
Interesting. Yeah, it'd be hard if they drop dead with any sort of pesticide, because a lot of our, it just tells you how much of our food has been.
I know.
It's kind of scary, actually, for us too.
Like, one group all died because I fed them. Like, I was just quickly buying something because I needed food for them, and I forgot to grab organic produce that one time, and they all died. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, this is a good one. So, about supplements. Yeah. So my whole protocol on this has changed recently. So, I'm actually not generally dusting. I gut load right before feeding. I feed exclusively the Repashy gel food, like the bug burger, for the crickets and dubia. It works really well. It provides both food and water source. I don't get like stupid amounts of flies in, like, little fruit fly gnat things into the containers. And then I'll just, like, right before feeding them, I'll grab some, put them in a container with a little bit of it, and they eat it up and I feed. So, I'm rarely dusting at this point. When I do dust, I typically use Repashy. I had been using a lot of Calcium Plus. I'm not using Calcium Plus as much anymore. Well, so I had an animal. You'll find might be an interesting story as a vet. So I had an animal die. And he was heavy. He was heavy when I bought him. He was a heavy boy. And I did a quick, like, necropsy on him after he died, and his heart was calcified.
Oh, wow. And
when I read through my veterinary textbook, it was saying that typically oversupplementation is the biggest cause of that. And so because of that, it really, like, made me a little bit more gun shy on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I was dusting most meals, and, like, I just I think overnutrition is a real concern just as much as undernutrition is. And so I'm a little bit more cautious, especially around vitamin D and calcium, and really try to focus on UV lights as opposed to a whole lot of dusting.
Yeah.
And then give my feeders a very good very good diet going in, so that they're getting nice, good gut-loaded food.
Interesting. That's really interesting that you're able to see that, because it is a thing. I think in school, we get like one lecture over reptiles, so we really don't get a whole lot of understanding at all. But yeah, my understanding that it's more rare than seeing, like, the metabolic bone disease, but maybe more common than we think, because people don't really do necropsies or whatever when they die. So I feel like we don't really know. And there needs to be more research with reptiles. I don't know how long it will take to get there, but it's definitely kind of behind, other biomedical kind of stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
But
I highly recommend having really good vets and having good resources available as well. Like, my you know, I've done a lot of consulting with my vet about diet and supplements and that kind of thing too. And so, but yeah, so I'm not as much of a duster as I had been.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yes.
So.
And yes, the question about quail and quail eggs. Yes, I feed both. They love both very, very much. I also buy, so I also do a couple of twists on it. I buy partially incubated quail eggs. So they have like a quail fetus in them, but they're not fully developed. And they really, really love those. And that's a slightly different nutritional profile than just a regular egg. And then I also buy ground quail raw dog food.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so basically it's the bones, the meat, and organ meat. And so it's not skin and feathers, so it's lacking that, but it's a whole lot better than, like, a lot of people will feed ground turkey. I was like, I need to find something that's more approximates like a whole prey item.
Yeah.
So I'll feed that too, and that tends to be a really popular food as well.
Huh. That's really cool. Yeah, that's pretty smart. Really smart too, doing it with the raw diet. So.
Yeah, I use button quail for babies, Dale Caturnix for others, and yeah, they love quail.
Awesome. Yeah. Yep. I'll have to go back and do the sponsors at the end because
when I buy from Blake. So
buy from Blake. Okay. Yep. I don't know what I just noticed, like, it was like, oh, now we're live, and I was like, oh, I thought I was live the whole time. So I'll have to go back and do some sponsors or whatever. I don't know what, that's never happened before, but I think most of it was gone. But yeah, a lot of knowledge. We'll kind of wrap it up. I like to keep it to an hour and a half, which is about
sounds good.
So I'll just wait for any more questions, and we'll kind of wrap up. But it was definitely could. Kind of a wealth of knowledge, really. So I feel like we just kind of hit maybe top of the ice curve. But was there anything that, like, I didn't ask that you wanted to talk about or anything?
No. I think we got to talk about a lot of stuff I'm really excited about. So
yeah, I learned quite a bit. And like I said, we only touched. I touched on the green tree monitor, but I want to hear about the traveling too, and just like kind of thought on transitioning from the ball pythons to other species, and just your thought process kind of behind that. So
that one was it was also very, very difficult for me to make that decision. Like it was several years to make the decision to do it from when I first kind of wanted to. I think because it was what I first got into with reptiles. It was what I was so, like, by far the deepest into. It was a really big different direction to go and a big change to make. So,
well, it's like,
but it's like,
what can I do to be different? You know, because I walk around and I love the ball pythons, but when every table has them and they all look very like similar, then I get kind of bored myself. And I love the species and work with the species, but when all I see is the same general, I say that about the cresteds too, don't hit me, people, but, like, you know what I mean? Like the lily whites or the red ones will pop out to me, but otherwise I just I can't pick up like the differences. And obviously I'm not, in it to know, but yeah. So trying to think of different ways to have different stuff, I guess.
It's hard. It's hard to figure out how to stand out and to differentiate from the masses, for sure. I mean, I think the fact that you're a vet, honestly, like, is a big selling point, that you can offer that kind of, like, background knowledge.
That's true. I think I have people, they hit my DMs, they're more than free to ask questions, but sometimes I feel bad. I'm like, just go see it.
Oh no, you have to. You can't give professional advice to people over Facebook or Instagram. Like, they
Yeah, I'll give general, but yeah, sometimes I feel bad. It's like I don't know. You have to do an exam. It's I do online consulting, but even then, it's more. I have to be very careful of the language I use because I can't legally diagnose, without an exam, and people just don't really understand that part of it. Like it's not human med. Like that's the most frustrating thing. Yeah, I'll get a picture of a mass and I'm like, well, it's a mass or it's a cyst or it's an abscess. Like there is no way to know unless you like test. People just don't get it. They get so mad. They're like, "You're a vet, aren't you?" I'm like, "I am, but I can't. I don't know. I can't tell you it's an abscess and it be cancer, and then you're really gonna be mad at me." So, anyways, but it's just,
I know. No, it's similar for me with like when people hit me up for like with legal questions. I'll be like, I can share information with you generally, but I'm not going to apply that information to your set of facts. That is legal advice, and I am not giving you legal advice.
Right. Yeah. There's like a fine line. It's like I do not want to lose my license, and I feel bad if I give you the wrong information.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, I don't see any other questions. So how can people reach out to you if they've got questions or want to see what you're producing?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram and Facebook for the reptile business. It's Kori Martin Reptiles. And I also have photography that you can follow as well. It's Kori Martin Photography.
Okay. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time tonight. It was a great conversation. Love to have you back in the future and talk about other species too, because I know we just keep a lot and we focus on the green tree. I learned a lot and I thought it was fantastic. So, and Mike, he's like, "Are you dead?" Well, I've been gone all weekend, so yeah, they're like obsessed now. But okay, cool. Put you backstage for now. You can leave if you got other things to do. But I just want to say again, thanks. I'm gonna do some sponsors here since I missed it at the beginning. So
sounds good.
Yeah, have a great rest of the night.
Thanks, you too.
Yep. All right. Thanks for tapping in, guys. Let's see. Next week we got Brooke from Infinity Critters, so that'll be exciting. And I'll take off the banner here, but I kind of missed it in the beginning. Yeah, for some reason when I hit live and it took forever to go live, so you guys missed the intro and everything. But basically, just this weekend I did the St. Louis NARBC. I'm used to doing the local shows near me, but I did the St. Louis one, so it's a little bit of a bigger show. I did great. I was super happy with how I did. Made money to hit the table and the hotel and put a decent amount of extra money in my pocket. So I sold snake and some geckos. So yeah, overall it went well for me. So I'm very thankful and happy with how that went. So can't complain there. Kind of learning on how to become a better salesperson, and it's all a learning opportunity. But I'll do some sponsors here since I missed them. But of course, as we say every week, go and support US ARC. These guys fight for our rights, and we can't do what we do day in, day out without them. So definitely hit them up on the website, see which states are having alerts in, donate if you can. Definitely become, like I said, a member for the year. There's a link down below. I think there should be to go to US ARC and become a member. Then we have the chipper. So go to the COCO.com, use TRAPFAM24 to get a percentage off your order. It's the only COCO I'll personally ever use. I like the COCO to go, where it comes pretty much pre-made for you to use and already moist and everything, and it helps with me and my allergies. And then, of course, we brought up Blake, but Blake's Exotic Feeders. Go to him, tell him that you're from MJ or from the Trap Fam. He'll get you set up with some quality quail and go from there and feed your animals the best quality that you can. And then we'll finish up with RGI, so Rare Genetics Incorporated. We talked a little bit about shed testing, but super important in order to progress your project. So save those sheds and send them to RGI. And with that, I will sign off for the night. If you guys have any questions or anything, reach out, and we'll see you next week. Chi.